Right, well, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, so Ken has not arrived yet, and I'm not able to get through to him by phone. So what we're gonna plan on is just going down the agenda,
Okay, that sounds great with me.
and then I'll just, I guess, call it to order at 6:40 PM on December 18th, 2023.
Okay, Angela, I don't have a
There you
video.
go.
Oh, here we go. Okay,
I
we're
didn't push the button yet, sorry.
It was program all.
There we
ho.
are.
So.
Okay, can we start with just a roll call of everybody that's here?
Carl here.
Hodgkins here.
Richardson here.
Reitlinger here.
All right, and then next on the agenda is public comment. Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you. I feel weird standing in the corner doing that.
All right, so public comment, Chuck Mitchell. Was that? Oh, okay, you checked to speak.
Oh, I'm
That's fine.
sorry.
Oh, it's fine. And Jenny?
Yes, I would. Hello, Jenny Morrison. 20051 Northwest Adcock Road, and we also have a place on Second and Balm that our daughter rents. And so I'm just here to speak on behalf of our Economic Development Committee and Yamhill Downtown Association, just for a quick update for some things that we're working on. And coming up next is and this is in conjunction with Chief Craven as well, working with a Community Heart and Soul, which is a nonprofit organization that helps provide structure and guidance for getting community input for what the community's desires are for the town, future growth, businesses, et cetera. And so we had a nice introductory meeting with the local representative, and then next week, after Christmas, we're meeting and going to get some more insight on what this program can do for us, and it could really align with our, like, creating a 2-year plan on how we want to shape advice for city council and for the planning commission on what the community wants for the town moving forward. So I just want to give an update. I've mentioned this group a few times, and so now we're kind of proceeding with some good support, and the Ford Family Foundation provides grant funding for this, and there's some other steps, but we're working a bit on it, and I'm excited to see what happens. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Last one.
Are there any online public comments? If so, please raise your hand. No online comments. Go ahead.
Okay. We have no presentations, no public hearings. So the first order of business is the discussion of the formula businesses, and we have a staff report. So hand it off to Walt.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So asked to go ahead and look at the issue of formula businesses. I put together a staff report that kind of draws attention to some of the issues, and also a suggestion with regard to the code language. I think just to, the first page of my staff report basically covers the background information, why we would want to have some limitations. And I think the bottom line is long-term economic growth is basically something that starts from the grassroots and goes forward. A lot of corporations have their chain stores in a number of towns, and the profits and whatnot from those stores go back to the headquarters. Whereas when you have local ownership and interest, you have greater interest in the community, and the profits basically stay local. And in fact, downtowns have a tremendous value in comparison to some large chain operations. Let's see. I did a quick little survey when I was in Lebanon. I compared two properties. One was Walmart, and the other one was a little brew pub that was next to a city park. And I went through the tax information, and I went ahead and calculated the per acre value. It turned out that the Walmart's value was $900,000 per acre. But when it came down to the brew pub, even though it was a tiny operation, it was about nearly $1.5 million in value. And that's because a lot of downtown areas can be redeveloped. They're connected to other stores. People see value in the downtown. And I think it's just this whole idea that, again, what I presented or what I submitted with a local self-reliance people. Walmart's headquarters are in Arkansas, which is where the store's profits go. But the local brew pub keeps the money in town. And so locally owned and operated businesses offer greater economic and I think tax benefits as well. So again, you can read that introductory 3 or 4 paragraphs, but that just gives you a little background why there's greater interest in separating, sort of restricting formula types of businesses. Now, I started looking at other places that had such regulations. As one would expect, a number of very sort of wealthy communities in California follow suit. And I saw some other places, but one place that I found locally that has such regulations is Yachats, and they have particular restrictions on what can and can't be done. Now, I've attached to this report an exhibit, and the exhibit simply goes through my recommendations, if you will, for a formula business restrictions. We start off with definitions, and this will be on page 4 of the report. I'm just going to review this in sort of summary. There will be a new definition, and the definition is extremely thorough and clearly identifies formula businesses. I'd like you to note that this definition is definitely applicable to a McDonald's or a dollar store, but could also apply to regional chains as well, like Black Bear Diners. In the C3 zone, the next thing, the commercial zone would require a conditional use approval to establish a formula business within the central business district. However, since the primary concern is the public face, I think along Maple Street, the commission may wish to refine the limitation just to those parcels within the central business district that front on Maple Street. And part of the reason is you don't want to close off investment everywhere in the community. You may want to focus where you really kind of focus on that downtown area that's critical for the community and be a little more flexible outside that. The other thing too is that we have a new section under conditional uses, which provide outlines, and this is on page 5 of the staff report. It's a separate conditional use. We have a special conditional use provisions within our development code, and this would be something new here. And a formula business would need to comply with the basic conditional use criteria. They would also have to demonstrate the following, that the proposed business is designed to serve the local, preserve and enhance the city's small town character, and to integrate existing community architecture and design. This criteria is designed specifically to avoid standard frontage and styling clues that alert residents and visitors to the purpose of the business. The other item is that use of standard corporate logos, signage, or similar markings will be prohibited. So you can't have the golden arches, if you will. The building scale must be comparable to surrounding development, and also precautions will be taken to minimize adverse impacts on development in the natural surroundings. Now, bottom line, these standards are pretty close to what we have for design standards with the central business district, which we went over a number of times with regard to the gas station. So it just enhances the fact that the building could look whatever way it wants to, but you can't have a clue that it's a Starbucks or a dollar store or a McDonald's or some other franchise. It has to be very clear that it's simply another commercial building downtown that just may be operated by someone else. Oh, hello? Okay. Now, a couple of things. Also, there was, let's see. Oh, okay. Finally, there is a option that I included here that you may want to think of. The option would prohibit placement of formula businesses within the central business district, period. You know, again, the visual presence is on Maple Street, and we're looking at trying to foster more local economic development than we currently have. After looking at this material, it dawned on me, and that's why I put a little summary here for us to think about. We have some options here. If we decide that it's worthwhile to have this formula business regulations, which would require a separate conditional use, I think that's fine. I think we have some options to say it's everywhere within the central business district or just along Maple Street. And if you want to prohibit these types of businesses in the central business district, you may want to think of it in terms of the entire central business district or just prohibit them along Maple Street. So you have some options to think about. I could certainly write around anything you choose, but I think as a general approach, I would say at least require the conditional use application process for a formula business along Maple Street. I think that gets you where you want to go with regard to your downtown, but also, how do I say this? Basically doesn't exclude outside dollars coming in and helping other parts of the city. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. And that's the end of the staff report.
So should we just go down the line? Does anybody have any questions? No, Ben, John, Sue?
So when you're talking about restricting it to just Maple Street, the thing that's a problem to me is when the one thing that I do know, my granddaughter, you know, owns the Laughlin House.
Mhm.
Rocky Losley owns the property on Maple Street. They were approached by Dollar General to purchase that property, tear down both of the houses and build a Dollar General there. So how easy is it if we just say no to Maple Street, knowing that right behind Maple Street, the other part of the block, is it easy to get a conditional use or whatever and change it so that they could affect this?
Well, again, I think that's an interesting point. What is the focus of the concern for the community? Is it throughout the central business district, or is it just focused along the main thoroughfare? If it's focused along just the main thoroughfare, then I think the two options are either conditional use or prohibition. Again, you have other side streets that a block or two away from downtown, it may not be that much of an issue if someone has a Ace Hardware store. Okay, I mean, you're not trying to restrict all development, but you want to make sure your core is representative of the community as opposed to franchise arrangements.
So can you, I know we've talked about this numerous times, but could you redefine the boundaries of the CBD?
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me get that up there. Dun, dun, dun. They're actually quite extensive. Okay. Mhm. Okay, this would be under 1046,
From Azalea to Second.
right?
Azalea the second.
Azalea to Second and Olive to
Very-
Maple,
Okay,
with the exception of the buildings that the school has. They're behind
yeah,
there.
So-
Yeah.
And then, of course, the service station at the end of town.
right. Now, that one is zone C3, but it's not part of the downtown. It's only related to commercial zone property. Yes, so I think you've identified the area. It's just that there's very few commercial pieces that are not within the central business district.
Okay, so we're talking the CBD is really just 3 blocks is all.
Actually, it's only 1.5 blocks.
Oh, I guess I was counting. From Second to Azalea, you said?
From east to west, it's only 1.5 blocks.
Oh, yeah, from east to west,
Right,
north to south is
Yes.
3.
Yeah,
Okay.
Chuck has a question
Yeah,
for,
so, well, I was gonna ask how to do this. So we have some people in the gallery who are interested in comments or questions. Is
Mhm.
process wise, how do we do that?
Let's see, I would say, first of all, this is just a work session, so you're not looking at voting on anything right now. So the other advantage, the other thing you can do is I'll be happy to respond to any questions that you have, but if you're done with that, then I would open it up for public comment. And that certainly makes sense.
The process would be get our questions out first and then,
Yes. And then if there's any questions after that, this is a little bit more back and forth than
Yeah.
a land use hearing, okay?
Yeah. That's kind of what I assumed. I wanted to make sure. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
the only other question I had was, so you talked about some regional businesses could be impacted.
Yes.
So what's the threshold or how do you define that? So, you know, is a place from Newburgh who's opening a place here, is that considered a chain by having just one other place or?
well, he had
Oh,
to
under-
10 or more or 2 of the.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, that's on the top of page 4. We're looking at 10 or more establishments. And there's a whole bunch of features that follow through. In fact, you can have chain hotels that the buildings don't look anything alike. They're just simply a chain that operates them, but the buildings are unique. There's no common uniform, et cetera. But again, I just wanted to raise the thought that there might be some regional type of operations that might fall under this. And one of them that just came to mind was Black Bear Diner. I've been to a number of them in my travels, and you know, I think there's more than 10 stores if I recall. Could be wrong on that, but you know, just recognize that you may be capturing regional firms too. That's all.
Singapore is pretty significant,
Mhm.
so, okay, that's what I wanted. That was my only question.
Okay, so back to the, like I said, because if you think about it, the Laughlin House is on Laurel and Main, and then, her name is, that lives on the corner of, First and Laurel. I mean, those two could very easily be brought into the commercial, because commercial district might, as time goes along, go down Main Street. You thinking about where we are today versus, because there's not very much land available for commercial use.
So right now, that's all residential, right?
Yes.
Correct.
So
Right now.
to become commercial though, would it have to come back through this?
It would have to
Body.
come back through us,
Right.
but how easy is that to do versus,
Difficult.
is it difficult? Okay.
Yes, the
Long as it's
reason
difficult.
is, the reason is you're gonna have to amend your comp plan map and also your zone map. And that requires the buildable lands inventory. Why do you need more commercial land? Why are you giving up residential land? That's kind of the basis of the whole buildable lands inventory. I know housing is definitely a major issue here. And so it might be difficult to make that change, especially when the downtown is, how do I put it, is kind of underutilized. I think, you know, there's vacant spaces and there's chances to redevelop a large number of properties. So just, you know, it can happen over time. Just understand that's not something that is taken care of at a planning commission meeting. Takes a lot of work.
So, okay, piggyback on that is how difficult is it to make our CBD bigger if we want to? So like, if we decide we want to make the core, this may be 20, 30 years down the road, but none of us are here. But, you know, if they want to make the CBD bigger so that the same restrictions apply before they, let's say they go through the process of changing it to commercial and they want to include it within the CBD at the same time, is that even more difficult, or is that
No.
actually easier?
Basically, what you want to do is establish the C3 zone on new properties. Then you make a decision, do you want to
The city manager got talking.
this district? So it's not a hard thing. You can do them both at the same time. The issue is expanding the C3 zone, and that will be a little bit.
More difficult.
Yeah, right now, we just don't have all the information at our fingertips to support a change.
Okay, so if we defined the formula business to the CBD, we can make sure as the city grows, they could define that bigger, right?
Correct. You have the option to make changes down the road. I think anyone who has been a planner has always said your development code is not etched in granite. You can always make changes. Sometimes it's a little more difficult than others, but I mean, you can make those changes as circumstances prevail in the city.
Right. Okay, so I see Ken's with us again. So, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the packet, Ken. So all we've done is look through the very first agenda item with the formula businesses. So we're doing comments on the panel. Do you have any questions for Walt?
Well, I hope not to repeat what's already been said. I guess I know we want to be friendly to business.
Mhm.
We want to keep the town not looking like a strip mall.
Mhm.
And we're trying to balance that. We're giving an option to large chains to come and look like us. Walt, have you seen that kind of thing happen or heard of it happening where, I mean, the business would be good, the employment would be good. But the Golden Arches aren't good. Have you seen where a business that has a pretty strict formula will adapt?
Well, actually, when I first started in planning many moons ago, City of Ashland told McDonald's, you're not putting up your golden arches. You want to have a little sign with your golden arches, so be it. But it's going to be at the entrance. You're not going to have a big sign. You're not going to have a pole sign, and you're not going to have a building designed as a the old type drive-in or drive-throughs would not happen. In fact, if you notice, most of the Mickey D's that you see out there are brick buildings or split face concrete, and I'm not saying they're most attractive, but they certainly don't stick out like a sore thumb they did in the past. So also, you notice in your sign code, you're under no obligation to approve with a variance, for example, to follow a corporate logo. If the corporate logo says it has to be this size and this standard here, you're under no obligation to modify your standards to allow that. So, we already have some regulations in there that give us a little control. And also the fact that we basically pretty significant limits on signs too. So, that's something to think about.
Now, a follow-up on that, you mentioned drive-throughs. Philip Higgins, that was one of the first things that he mentioned, that drive-throughs are just from a urban planning, city planning point of view, drive-throughs are not a good thing for a small town. It was just kind of the conclusion. Do we already have, or would we also need to talk about drive-throughs in a separate ordinance, or should we put it into this one?
Well, interesting point. You currently have a drive-through, drive-in provision within the central business district. And that's already on the books. And so you may want to think about whether or not you want to continue that or cross it out.
What is that provision?
That is it's under chapter 1046, and there's a specific requirement on drive-ins and drive-throughs.
But it allows them if you meet the criteria.
Exactly. So they are currently allowed, subject to certain standards.
Well, I don't pretend to know the ins and outs of what Phil was talking about, and I've done just a brief Google search, and what I saw agreed with drive-ins are not good for small towns, drive-throughs. Maybe that's a separate issue that we should put on our agenda with the rest of the commission's approval, and not try to put it into this one.
That's a thought. And you are aware of what my comments will be on our technical assistance grant.
Okay, so that would be part of maybe that technical assistance grant, that research and development of code. Okay, well, let's not lose track of that, because I think it is important to our economic development committee.
Okay, my main thing is that, again, if you want to restrict these, definitely Maple Street. And I think the conditional use is a good way of going, because that, I think, allows some flexibility. The remainder of the central business district, I don't know if it's that critical. And again, I wouldn't want to put up a barrier to outside investment. And the first thing in my mind is a hardware store that is always going to be tied into one of the chains. Rarely do you see an independent store these days. So again, just a thought, and that's why I sort of emphasize that, where do we want to have the most impact? And I think Maple Street would be it.
Now, just one more question I had, and that is, okay, McDonald's, and I used that example. McDonald's says, okay, we won't build arches. We're going to build a brick face, and it's going to look, we're going to have a shake shingle roof on it, and it's going to be, come on, all you folks, and just country like we are. But well, maybe some people in town, we don't want their food. We don't want that, even the food. That is not part of what we as a planning commission can do, correct?
absolutely correct. We're not here to judge the market and make decisions for the community on what they will or will not eat. We are here to say, here's a set of rules. Do you comply or do you not comply? And if you can comply, can it be conditioned in a manner that you will comply? And no, I still remember working in Kaiser, the big fights over having a Pizza Hut. And half the people who were at the hearing were going, we don't need another pizza place in town. I'm going, that's not our job to tell you what to eat. It's, do they meet the requirements or not? End of story.
All right, well, that's my questions. Thank you. I apologize for not being there. I am fine, except for maybe a lapse of cognitive continuity.
I'm right behind you, Ken.
So I have been kind of helping steer the meeting. Do you want to take over?
No,
Okay.
please, Sean.
Okay.
Boy, that was
So I think all the commissioners have had any other questions? All right, so I think some people in the gallery had questions or comments. So Jenny, would you like to start?
Sure, yes, okay.
Good, state your name and.
Yeah, Jenny Morrison. The YDA and the Economic Development Committee. So first, I'd like to say thank you, Walt, for taking this on and doing all that research. This is awesome. I would like to just comment though on the, just Maple Street versus expanding. And I think that that's important to consider, knowing that just one block to the west of Maple Street, there are buildings that probably will become, it's part of the commercial-esque stuff. So if it just is facing Maple Street, I don't think that's enough. There's the surrounding areas and who knows how things need to expand to accommodate. And so I would feel, not that it matters what I feel, but I'd like to comment that I think it's important to not just have Maple Street, but to have that be beyond Maple Street. And then also with the point of this, I think it's beyond just the sign. And I'm thinking now, like, let's go back to Dollar General in Amity. They put in the cutest Dollar General you've ever hoped to see, but it's still Dollar General and it's on it's on Main, on 99. And so I think that the point of this business restriction is to encourage and have the capabilities for local people to set up business. And I definitely see what you're saying about like Ace Hardware or something like that. But I think there's got to be some power for the planning commission, the city council to not be stuck. And it's like, oh, well, darn it, it's whoever big business and they have the cute sign and their building fits. And so then it's still taken away from our local objectives. So that's what I just want to put out there. So, thank you.
So, Walt, you're saying we'd have to come up with definitions. We have to have rules around whether or not what they have to adhere to in order to come in. Is that accurate? Like the Dollar General, they have the cute building and all that. That
Yes.
meets the criteria. Is there anything we can do for that?
Well, I'm not sure we could. I mean, there's only so far we can go with regard to putting, clamping restrictions. The main thing is think of other franchises. Go down what I'm familiar with, Lancaster Boulevard. You could tell what the business is a mile away. It has the same consistent signage, from one tire place to the, one less Schwab to the next, or you go to a McDonald's that has the same finish. And it's just that sort of architectural sameness is what we want to avoid. What I put here is that very clear, they have to have it fit in with the community, within the character. And so we have some very strict requirements in the central business district. In fact, if anything, these they enhance this sort of approach. You've got to have brick or wood. You just can't put up, a concrete building. Those sort of things I think kind of work hand in hand. So is there any guarantee in this? And the answer is no. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee what a commission might do down the road or what variance may be granted. But this at least gives us something to work with. And if we could find a better way to do it along the way, we can always improve the requirements. These seem to be reasonable without being overly restrictive and just putting the developer on notice. It's not a walk in the park. You've got to go ahead and show how you're going to fit in this community.
Yes.
One thing that I
Well-
think that is on our side, and I don't mean this wrong when I'm saying it, but most of the businesses that would be in this criteria are gonna require a larger piece of property than what we really have available. There is only, the lot that the fire department has is okay, and then over where the old bus barn, that area right there, but other than that, everything else is a much smaller piece of property, and so
They would have to buy multiple lots.
they would absolutely, they'd have to run a bunch of businesses out of business in order to be able to have room to facilitate something that would be accommodate there, because they're not gonna be able to do it on 10 parking spots or 6 parking spots, which would be what would be available. That's just my thought.
That's a good point, Sue. And as I remember, the offer that came from Dollar General was to 2 landowners
Yes,
simultaneously. And let's just put a fine point on that. Well, Dollar General, let's just stick with that example. And like Jenny said, they build one just as cute as a button. We can't stop them. Jenny said, I hope the planning commission would have a way to do something about that. I don't see that. I hear you saying that we don't.
In other words, okay, cute as a button can be very subjective.
Okay, no, excuse me. Let me just say that it meets our criteria. We write it up and we write
Okay.
really, really good criteria that gets us just what we want as far as looking at the building. But
Right.
what's inside the building?
Oh, we're not changing that. We can't. We
No, but
have-
excuse me, what I meant to say is the nature of the business inside the building is not for us to determine if it's our for community or not. I mean, Dollar General is an example of, you hear that it kind of takes advantage of lower economic people, that the individual prices are actually greater than if you could buy them in bulk, and these arguments against Dollar General, but that has no criteria to the planning commission.
That is absolutely correct. It's sort of like the pizza example I gave, whether, that is a market decision. And if the public chooses to shop there, that's their choice. We just don't want the building to stick out like a Dollar General. We want it to fit in. We want it to be part of the community in terms of its look, its place in the community. And that's going to require, maybe some significant changes to the design of the structure and location and setbacks. So no, it's not going to be out there in the back with a big parking lot in front.
And the reality is, a lot of those change probably want their cookie cutter construction, or they don't want to do it.
Well, and thank you for thinking of us, but
Yeah.
we're
So-
here to-
All right, Chuck had a, go ahead, state your name and.
Chuck Mitchell, 760 Second Street, Gammon, Oregon. Hey, Walt, I got a question for you. Overlay zones on top of CBD or existing zones already, can you, similar to like a floodplain zone or a forest zone, can you put an overlay zone over the top of existing zones that are already established?
Well, usually it's tied in through the zone change process. We do have a limited use overlay zone provision. And that is when you make the zone change application. You can always put something over. Did you have something particular in mind?
Well, some of these things that you are discussing tonight, you could identify an area and map it all out and put your overlay zone on that without affecting the existing zones that are there now.
Like create a formula business zone.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
whatever.
actually, what we already have that. It's called the Central Business District. And that sort of defines everything we have. That is basically the C3 zone downtown. The only other piece that is zone C3 is the Shell station at the north end, and that's outside of the Central Business District. So we already have that overlay here.
Okay, maybe we expand that or overlay zone to fit, bump it up one block this way, a couple blocks that way. So it encompasses what we're trying to achieve here with some of this code without affecting some of the zones. As far as, I just wanted, before we get out over our skis about McDonald's and big places like that coming to settle in here in Yamhill, we all have to remember that demographics plays a large part in all cities on who comes. Dollar General's model is modeled after Walmart's model. Walmart back in the 70s established Walmarts in towns of 10,000 to 15,000 people. That was kind of their niche. They were staying away from the big cities and hitting the McMinnvilles, the Moscow, Idahos, the Pullman, Washington, that's where the Walmarts kind of established. Dollar General has followed that same model, but has even reduced it even smaller to towns such as the Amities, out at the coast, Rockaway has a Dollar General. So they've followed the same, and I've kind of done some reading on Dollar General. Out in the middle of Kansas, there's a town of 3,000 people out in the middle of nowhere that has a Dollar General. Because it's close, there's nothing within 45-minute drive each way to that Dollar General. So Dollar General has done the math and done the logistics to locate these small little stores in areas that bigger stores aren't capable of locating to. So they're getting a jump on all these little towns, and Yamhill's, huh? Yeah, exactly. And they're kind of a short distance to Dayton, and everybody can kind of come to that without driving into the big cities or the bigger towns. So that's the model. I don't think we'll ever have to worry about a McDonald's or a Burger King or anything like that. There's a reason there are no Olive Gardens in McMinnville. 40,000 people live in McMinnville. Why isn't there an Olive Garden in McMinnville? Because it doesn't fit the demographic. For the Olive Gardens, the McDonald's, all the big restaurants, they have to hit a demographic of so many people, so much income per households. They have to hit these marks. Otherwise, it's not worth them to make that investment to locate in those communities, because sure, first 6 months, it'll be great, and then it dies off, and then it can't survive. So there are demographics, and as a geographer, planner, I'm well aware of these statistical analysis that these corporations and bigger companies have to meet to locate something and we just don't have it here in Yamhill.
I guess I totally agree with you. I also want to make sure we put in place a structure so that it's not difficult 20 or 30 years from now. If,
Absolutely, and we have some ground we can identify kind of behind T&E, behind the old bank building where the existing the granary is and all that. I mean, that's not going to be there forever. That building is done. To remodel that building would cost more than to take it down and build something brand new there. that whole block there will at some point in time become something else, probably not in our lifetimes, but it will become something else. That's the most coveted spot in all of Yamhill for any kind of commercial development, right? That huge, gigantic block. So, and then, north of that is housing. West of that is, the post office, and we can keep going that way. And I think I know there's some houses along there, but I think all the way to Third, all those houses, all that needs to become commercial property. And eventually, once it becomes commercial, somebody will come in and buy those houses, knock them down to build either stores or something like that. But that needs to be identified. And that's why I was talking about the overlay zone. And, we got Rocky's house here, go up one block to Laurel, right? And Laurel all the way behind us probably needs to be identified as well. I know there's some houses along there, but I mean, as we think, we're living today and but 30, 40 years ago from now, somebody's gonna have to deal with this.
Well, in the block that, up between Second and Third, that is already, commercial and residential.
Right.
So that whole block there is,
So, and I guess, so I guess along with Susan, my question was, how easy is it to make those changes?
yeah, that's why I was
And what do
asking.
we need to do to set it up so that
Well, you're starting-
future planning
You're
commission?
starting tonight,
Right.
talking about it.
Yeah.
The next thing is identifying, getting a map and drawing a black line around it and saying, this is what we're identifying, not for today, not for tomorrow, not for 5 years from now, but down the road. So, because we're in a spot now where we're out of buildable land housing. And that's kind of why I'm here, is to help with that too, because when we're out. And we got a plan for the next generations to come.
Mhm.
So, Walt, would be our next step?
Well, at this juncture, I think what I'm hearing here is a general concern that if we focus in only on Maple Street, we will lose opportunities off the main drag, so to speak. So I suggest at this juncture that we begin the process of going through adoption and just recognize that we would encompass the entire central business district. So Maple Street and all the side streets would be subject to this additional and conditional use requirement only for those businesses that qualify as a formula business. It wouldn't be for anyone else, just if you have a formula business. And we just incorporate the entire central business district. And once that's done, any further expansion of the central business district will automatically encompass those same rules and regulations. So in effect, as it grows, those regulations stay in place. So that would be my thought at this time. And again, this is just a work session and we come back for a public hearing. This is more opportunity for input and we can kind of discuss it further, but that's kind of the feeling I'm getting from the commission in terms of the next step.
So do we need to have a motion or anything for that?
I think if everyone nods their heads, I'd be pretty happy.
Public hearing?
Right.
Okay.
Based on state law, I got to figure out how quickly I can do this. See, where's the January meeting?
it's early because.
Yes, you're
January
right. Okay,
15th.
The first is on
okay.
Monday.
We're too late to make the state deadline for 35 days. We will hear this in February. Okay?
That'll give us a chance to look over and maybe talk together about your proposed language, Well.
Absolutely. In
Yeah,
other words, there's nothing wrong with, if you want to bring this up again in January, if someone else has some details, fine. Remember, the notice I provide to DLCD simply says, we're looking at this. and we
Oh.
want your comment. That doesn't mean we have to adopt what we specifically say we will. We can make changes, and at the end of the process, we let them know that we made these changes or there were no changes.
Well, I would suggest, well, if you have something ready for us in January that we take a look on and get as ready as we can.
Okay.
Move forward as quickly as we can.
Okay, and then we would have a formal noticed hearing in February. Okay, real good.
All right, thank you. So the next item is Walt again, I am assuming, the housing grant.
Yes, the housing grant, contracts have been sent out to the city. I'm not sure exactly where they are in signatures, but I think it's the mayor and city manager need to sign. And that gets, that will start the process of getting a consultant on board to begin the work. So first step has been taken,
We don't have a city manager.
and that's it.
Is that?
We don't have a city manager, do we? City?
So the question is, who's the city manager that's gonna be?
We have an interim city administrator.
Yeah, so that's chief?
Yeah, the chief,
Yeah, Chief Craven is it interim.
right?
Okay, so.
And I think the mayor signs as well. I didn't spend a lot of time looking at the contract because it's something the city has to do. I can't sign for the city.
All right, and an update on the technical assistance grant?
We got it, $10,600 to look at the central business district. So I think that's a good start. And I think after the new year, I'll probably be contacted by Melissa, our field rep, and we'll get that program off the ground as well. So as we said before, there was a little concern if we got all this money, why should we take it out of the city budget if someone else is going to pay us? So it worked out, and I was very pleased to see that. I think it'll be a pretty straightforward project, and there's certainly enough money involved to get her done.
So a quick question so that I assume we'll look at the regulations around the CBD.
Exactly.
Will it look at the boundary of the CBD as well?
Well, we can't change the boundary unless we shrink it.
Okay.
Right. I mean,
Will there be an opportunity like to evaluate what might be beneficial for us to look into down the road?
well, that's going to come out of the housing study because
Okay,
one of the things that we get out of that, and again, it's a $47,000 grant, is a buildable lands inventory. And that will bleed over into the commercial uses as well.
okay.
Okay.
Just a quick question, Sean. Well, remind us why we can only shrink the central business district. What does it take to expand it, or what are those barriers?
Expanding the central business district, you have to expand the C3 zone. Or maybe I should say you can expand it, but you're just bringing in the Shell station. So to expand the CBD, you have to expand the C3. That requires you to show everyone why you don't need all the land for housing and why you need all this land for commercial. And that's why that housing grant is going to be really critical, because we can piggyback off of that. Nothing moves very fast, but at least we'll have the data, and the state's paying for most of it. So I think that's kind of a win-win, and that's going to help us in other things.
Thank you.
All right. So the last item under other business is the review of Title 11.
May I beg an indulgence, getting that it's a week before Christmas, that we kind of move that to January?
Thoughts?
I like it.
Ken?
Yeah, that's fine with me. I can't imagine refusing Walt and dragging him through that way. And then we might not get the product we want anyway out of it.
Ho, ho, ho.
I used my lunch hours the last 2 days to read all that.
Well, you are prepared for next month then. Excellent.
Okay, all right.
Just real quick before we close, can I ask?
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question, Walt.
Hey, Walt,
Yes,
the middle housing that was approved by the state of Oregon,
yes,
I know it's for cities of 10,000 population or more, correct?
correct.
But I think it's also up to each city to adopt that or not. Is that correct?
Well, there are some provisions. There's nothing preventing Yamhill from adopting the whole plate of requirements for the larger cities. I work in Nehalem and they adopted everything. In a single family zone, you may have a single family home, a duplex, triplex, or a fourplex, and then everything goes in your higher density. And there's other things that we have to consider too, and that is low-income housing requirements. So anyway, that is part of that housing grant
Right.
that the state has given us. So they will lay out what needs to be done. And then it's just a matter of adoption. But we're not to a point where we can't adopt some of this stuff. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and the only reason I bring this up is the expansion of anything takes a while. You and I are well aware of that. And so between now and 7 years from now, it would probably be wise to adopt something like that to allow some infill to take place on some maybe larger lots, and allow, some growth to continue to move forward, because currently there's no place to build a house in Yamhill other than maybe just a handful of lots. And I mean, under 6.
Right. I'm not disagreeing with your comment. I think the housing needs analysis or the study will help us along that line. And also, I think it's important that the city looks at their options and make sure that it works well with the community as well.
Sure.
I know the changes in Nehalem, some people are a little taken back, but the council passed them, and believe me, there hasn't been an overwhelming desire for people to pop in duplexes on vacant lots. So, we'll see how it goes. But yes, the state's
Well,
gonna,
I'm very familiar with Nehalem, and they're up against some boundaries as well. They got the
yeah,
water river right in front of them to their east. Manzanita to their west. To their north is a lot of mountains, and to the south is the bay. So they're
Right.
kind of in a really tight little spot there, and they have no ability to grow. So it made sense for them to adopt those codes to allow people to build on some of those larger lots within that city. So I understand why they did what they did.
well, it worked out well for us.
Right.
All right. Other information or information announcements, you'll see a list for the commissioners, a list of meeting dates. Essentially, that is the third Monday of each month. And I did look through it. I didn't see a holiday. So I'm not sure.
Probably water advisory.
Well, except I guess next month, technically for some people, it's a holiday. And then the other item is, this is John's last meeting.
Yeah.
And so I have only been here 9-10 months now. So I haven't had to work the full 2 years, but I appreciate your contribution. Ken, is there anything you say?
Yeah, it's really great that, John, you stepped up. We needed you. And fortunately, we have somebody coming behind you, so you don't have to feel like you're abandoning the ship to go down. And thank you for being on it for the while you were. And it was great working with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun.
Thank you indeed.
And enjoy your sporting events with your son.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
How old is he?
11.
Oh, good good age.
You're
Okay.
hitting those teenage years where things are gonna speed up. All right, so with that, I think we are adjourned unless anybody has anything else.
Yes, I'd like to wish everyone here a very Merry Christmas and best wishes for the new year.
Thank
So-
you.
You too.
Same to y'all.
Where's your hat?
Take care.
All right.
You should be wearing a Santa hat.